When I was little, my father was famous. He was the greatest samurai in the empire. He cut off the heads of 131 lords.
Hey everybody, my name is Jerry Williams, aka Greater Sapien. Thanks for stopping by. This one is a bit of a mixed bag. I'm taking a critical look at a video making claims about the California schools by someone called Actual Justice Warrior. But since it's a politically motivated video I'm looking at, this will not be a wholly objective take. Now, I first came across this video, Black Lives Matter takes over California schools, by a blind link. A lot of people just feast on videos with a particular worldview and then throw the links my way. What about this? What about that? Taking the video as gospel and then challenging me to disprove its claims. When the same claims came my way a couple more times, I decided to look into them a bit more, only to find anyone talking about it comes back to the same source, this video. There are three things I'm going to be dealing with here. There are the claims that the people present to me based on the video. There are the claims made by the video maker himself, and then there is the reality as best I can find. And the reason I say the best I can find is because there are a lot of documents involved and some claims don't have any supporting materials at all for me to judge the reality of them. So this one's a bit of a rabbit hole, so bear with me. So the claim I'm seeing from commenters is that the California schools are making kids write social justice letters in math class. And then they point to this video by SJW. The video begins.
California has gone way too far. Very soon in that state, it will become impossible for any child to graduate from a public high school without first doing mandatory service as a radical left-wing activist.
So that's the first claim by the video maker. And then he goes on to explain that the video is being made in conjunction with the David Horowitz Freedom Center and one of his organizations. So right off the bat, my spidey sense went up because Horowitz is a very conservative political activist who is deep into the culture war type of discourse. He continues and he gets to his first bit of evidence.
Going to be taking a deep dive into the proposed mandatory ethnic studies curriculum for the state of California, what students are going to be required to learn and regurgitate in order to receive their high school diploma. And the reason we're going over this curriculum is because from top to bottom, across all subjects, when this is implemented, the entire education system in the state of California will be converted to pure propaganda.
So this is where we get into the math class claim.
Look at this math assignment, let me emphasize that again, math assignment that I discovered glancing through the curriculum. According to this math assignment, students will have to write a letter to the Oakland Police Department demanding that they stop racially profiling their own residents.
Right off the bat, I'll point out that this guy, Sean, says that he found this math problem in the proposed curriculum for the upcoming Ethnic Studies program that has not been approved for or implemented. So, this is not a problem from a math class, and this is not a class that has been implemented in California. So, the claim that kids in California are having to write letters to the Oakland police in math class is false. Now, the very first time I saw this video, without even looking into the background of the claim, which I'll get to, I knew this wasn't from a high school math class. What math class gives an assignment and puts in the instructions, using math, do this? So I thought that maybe this class was like a criminal justice elective course. I don't know if everyone watching is familiar with the Common Core standard of doing things in California, but they integrate different disciplines into all of the courses. So in PE, they'll get writing assignments, or an elective on criminal justice might have math problems worked in, because that's how life is. Things don't just stay separated. So that was my thought. But he said he found this in the curriculum, right? Luckily, he politely put a bunch of links in his description, and one of them says it's for the complete curriculum. I download the materials and look through them. No sign of this math problem. I word search all the documents. There are 3. And nothing. This is not part of the proposed curriculum. This is where it gets a bit rabbit holing. I put things aside, but when I come back, I can't remember the name of the video, but I remember the YouTuber's name, so I go to his channel and click on the video with a title about becoming a leftist or drop out. On top of that, it has some of the same links as the video I looked at before. Not only that, it has a link to what it calls the original video. This third video is from a year ago on the same topic with mostly the same links. I double checked. Yes, the same links. The article with the curriculum is over a year old, as is the Detroit News article he linked to. The proposed curriculum he linked to was an old version. It took a few tries, but I was able to hunt down the version proposed this past August. But we'll get back to that. Now I'm looking at the original video called California's Ultra Woke Curriculum. It starts off the same way as the first one I showed, with some hyperbole.
Question for the day. Has the state of public education in the United States of America gotten so bad that it's normal for a school curriculum to require all high school students under threat of not being able to graduate to join an open borders protest movement that is designed to advocate for the rights of illegal immigrants to vote? Is it inevitable that we're going to see curriculum designed to divide students up by race and assign fault to one race for oppressing the other race who are assigned a victimhood status?
And that it's another David Horowitz joint. And that this video is about California designing a curriculum that forces students to advocate for the voting rights of illegal immigrants under the threat of not being able to graduate, and is dividing students up by oppressor and victimhood status. Again, this is about the proposed ethnic studies course requirement for graduation that has not been implemented. In fact, at the time of this original video, the first draft had already been rejected and sent for a rewrite, because it was, after all, a first draft. He claims that there was a huge backlash to the decision to require ethnic studies, but the article he puts up says that the backlash was not about the existence of the requirement, but of the inclusiveness of the curriculum. He continues.
In order to complete this education program, students are required to become quote-unquote agents of change and complete one engagement action project.
Okay, so here I can look at the proposed curriculum he's referring to and check out what it says. So on page 14, ethnic studies teaching and learning is meant to serve as a bridge between educational spaces, institutions, and community, thus encouraging students to use their knowledge to become agents of change, social justice organizers and advocates, and engaged global citizens. So, while this gentleman may not like the terms agents of change being used here, it doesn't actually say becoming an agent of change is a requirement, does it? It says its goal is to encourage students to use their knowledge to become agents of change. There is a difference there, and that difference matters. Then he says this about the engagement project.
The course guide features a grand total of only one engagement project that students must complete in order to graduate high school in the state of California, and that project requires them to do activism in order to promote voting rights for illegal immigrants in local elections in the state of California.
That's a big claim, so let's look at that. The only place that project is mentioned is on page 18. And as you can see at the top, it, for one, does not say that this engagement action project must exist. It says it should. A subtle but important difference. And if you look below, you'll see that the Voting Rights Project isn't a requirement. It isn't even a suggestion. It's an example. For example, if students decide ... So his claim that the one engagement project that students must complete is this voting rights thing is a straight up lie. But wait, I think I may be being a bit harsh saying that he's lying. He may not actually know what he's saying is false. I say this because he keeps flashing up these screenshots from an article in the Detroit News, which is linked to in all these videos, and he seems to just be parroting what is said in this opinion piece, just with new phrasing. But he repeats these bits as from this opinion column as if they're facts.
No, you did not mishear me. The state of California actually put forward plans on paper to withhold high school diplomas from all of its students a virtual economic death sentence in today's economy, in order to force them to become advocates for illegal immigrants' ability to vote in California local and state elections.
No, they didn't. This is just a complete lie and is not supported by the documentation. By the way, remember, he included links to the documentation in this video, so he either didn't know that the documentation does not support his claim, or he does and didn't think his viewers would check. I don't know, but I do know that at least one person has defended this position to me by saying, he has the documentation, what do you have? Which tells me, at minimum, his viewers aren't checking the resources. Anyway, he goes on for a while about how this means that the state of California is trying to give away elections to illegal immigrants, and since his original premise is already shown to be false, I'll move on. He then talks about an exercise called the Privilege Walk.
But the curriculum doesn't get any better after that. It tars all white students in the state of California as oppressors. It tells them that being white is inherently exclusionary to all other groups, and it requires them to take a privilege walk in order to complete the ethnic studies curriculum. So according to this curriculum, since whiteness inherently separates you from the rest of society, in order to complete this curriculum, you have to racially segregate all of the whites, harass them until they feel incredibly guilty about the way that they were born, and then after they apologize for being born white, they can complete the course.
So again, I looked through the proposed curriculum and found the privilege walk in two places. Once in the introduction, where it says nothing about targeting white students, and again in the sample, i.e. not mandated, course section as part of a list of optional, again, not mandated, exercises to look at the many aspects of privilege, educational, economic, not solely racial. And again, he's either lying or hasn't read the documents, because the sample privilege walk that they have in the document doesn't divide the students up by race. It has pre-made sheets with fake biographies on them, and students roll dice in order to be assigned an identity, and they change identities throughout the exercise. And there's no mention of any student having to apologize for anything in the entire curriculum. He goes on to repeat the opinion of the author of this article as if she's stating facts written into the curriculum, stating,
instead of uplifting messages about how you can make it, how you can succeed as long as you do the right things, they're taught that everything is working against them and the entire system of America is designed to keep them down. Capitalism is completely demonized by this curriculum as a system in which, quote, people of color are disproportionately exploited under.
Again, nowhere in this curriculum is this mentioned as being taught. The part about capitalism and people of color is in the glossary of terms, a whole separate document from the curriculum, where it defines capitalism and adds an additional fact that within ethnic studies, scholars are often very critical of the system of capitalism, as research has shown that Native people and people of color are disproportionately exploited within the system. Now, you may not like that many ethnic studies scholars are critical of capitalism, but it remains a fact that they are. But nowhere in here is this claim that students will be taught that they're doomed to be exploited or whatever. This is just Sean, actual justice warrior, parroting what the author wrote. We know this because he goes on to rephrase the next sentence from the article.
No mention of the fact that capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any other system on earth.
Is this allowed? You get to just repeat what other people say for your own content? You mean I do all this writing for nothing? Who are you talking to, Jerry? You do this all by yourself. Anyway, to close out a look at this video, the only accurate claim is that there is no mention of anti-Semitism in the curriculum.
And speaking of things that are not mentioned by this curriculum, anti-Semitism is completely missing from this curriculum that is supposedly about oppression and bigotry.
Which is a criticism that they are already taken into account, as Jewish groups have said. Hey, you can't talk about white supremacy without talking about anti-Semitism. That's kind of their jam. Working my way forward in time, I come to the second video in this series, and it is a series, as Sean here has said that there are more to come. He starts off with a recap of the video from last year, with an added twist.
Now, longtime viewers of the Stop K-12 Indoctrination series will remember we actually covered California's first attempt to implement this last year, an attempt that largely failed due to the fact that this curriculum was dripping with obvious and historic anti-Semitic tropes. This curriculum was so radical, so racist, that even the supermajority of Democrats in the California State Senate ended up rejecting it after the public was able to read what's in it.
We just watched that video. There was nothing about it being filled with anti-Semitic tropes or being so racist. The article that he bit from throughout the last video, no fan of the curriculum, said nothing about that. Another article he got screenshots from about its rejection says nothing about complaints of anti-Semitism except for complaints that anti-Semitism wasn't discussed in the course. So why has he decided to make that claim? Maybe it will come up later. Then he makes this claim about the new version of the curriculum, which he claims is even worse than before.
The stated goal of the new curriculum is to build new possibilities for post-imperial life that promotes collective narratives of transformative resistance.
Well, if that's the stated goal, I should be able to find it in the curriculum, which I did once I found the curriculum. If you recall, the links he had to the curriculum on his videos were all to the 2019 proposed curriculum. But I didn't find it stated as a goal. It's in the guiding values section, along with a whole bunch of other things like cultivating empathy, critiquing empire building and history, and its relationship to white supremacy, challenging imperious colonial beliefs and practices on multiple levels, and concluding with this section with conceptualizing, imagining, and building new possibilities for post-imperial life that promotes collective narratives of transformative resistance, critical hope, and radical healing. Now, I'll be the first to say that the terms critical hope and radical healing make my eyes roll back into my head. But these guiding values aren't stated as a goal of the course, as our friend Sean would like to claim. We know that this because the very next section of the curriculum is called 8 Outcomes of K-12 Ethnic Studies Teaching, which sounds a lot like stating the goals. And that new possibilities bit he read is not part of the goals, though there is a new possibilities mentioned amongst the goals under number 6, promoting self-empowerment for civic engagement, where it says, help students connect current resistance movements to those of the past and imagine new possibilities for true democracy. Not bad. He then repeats the claim about its smearing of capitalism that he said in the previous video. He then says,
say goodbye to traditional history, math, science, and literature. Students will now be taught the 4 I's of oppression: ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized.
And while it's true that the 4 I's of oppression is part of this course, the idea that they somehow are replacing traditional history, math, and science and literature is utter bunk. I can't recall that if he's mentioned this, but the ethnic studies course, if implemented, would be a semester requirement. So I don't know how you can replace all of those other courses in one semester. Then he makes this claim.
The state of California has actually taken it a step further, and they're actually planning on requiring students against the First Amendment to participate in political activities in order to further leftist causes in order to graduate. The approved topics are as follows: racism, LGBTQ rights, immigration rights, access to quality healthcare, and income inequality.
Again, this is a simple thing to look up once you find the actual curriculum and go to the appendix that gives the outlines of approved courses that are currently being offered as electives at different school districts throughout California. In this case, the San Diego School District has a college prep elective called Introductions to Ethnic Studies, where students are to form a club or an organization, basically in order to create a space in order to present their research findings in front of a public audience. The unit outline states some possible topics students will examine may include racism, LGBTQ rights, immigration rights, ... Some possible topics may include is a far cry from the approved topics are as follows. And remember, he's claiming all students in California will be required to do these political activities in order to graduate, when in fact, not only is this only one course in San Diego, it's one course out of 30 that are listed in the appendix. Obviously, all 30 are not required in order to graduate, yet he, or the people he's working with, decided to claim that one course was written as law. And just as a cherry on top of this disinformation he's spreading, in the very appendix where these courses are listed, it explains, the course outlines provided with this model curriculum are intended to offer guidance to teachers and administrators interested in developing courses or units in ethnic studies. Every course is unique, and local education agencies are encouraged to tailor their particular courses to the needs and interests of their student population. While the course outlines offer a wide range of potential courses, they are not intended to limit a local education agency's options. So it seems he was definitely wrong about that requirement. Or was he lying? He continues by going on to repeat a claim he made in the first video about students only having one option of advocating for voting rights of undocumented immigrants. And it's a repeat because he's quoting the same opinion article from 1 year ago, and that passage isn't even in the current documentation. That's a reference to the 2019 version. So I'm starting to think this gentleman isn't interested at all in actual facts. Now, check out this next bit.
And if you were wondering if the anti-Semitism that was so bad in this curriculum last year that the supermajority of Democrats in the California state legislature could not pass this bill, it's not only not gone, but it's more in your face than it was last year. Before, they were just not mentioning anti-Semitism. They would promote Islamophobia and talk about how Islamophobia was a form of historic discrimination, but no anti-Semitism.
Did you catch that? Earlier in this video, he said that the old version was so anti-Semitic and dripping with anti-Semitic tropes that it couldn't pass. Then he repeats how anti-Semitic it was again here, but then he says it's more anti-Semitic now because before it just didn't mention anti-Semitism. Now remember, I said that one valid criticism of the last version was that it didn't mention anti-Semitism, which he just confirmed. Yet at the beginning of this video and this sentence right before, he said it was dripping with anti-Semitic tropes. I'm confused. But anyway, he says now it's really bad.
This time, they decided to talk about how the United States and the entire economy is controlled by shadowy capitalist figures that are trying to keep minorities down, and asking students to write an essay about how Jewish people became a part of that shadowy capitalist cabal that's keeping everybody else down.
First, let me point out that the posit theories of control part is not in quotes. This is him or someone he's getting his ideas from editorializing. They claim, of course, tips its hat at this, meaning it doesn't say it outright, but the meaning is there. So I looked this course up, and like before, this is not a course that will be mandated by the state. It's a course that is currently an elective at one charter school in Eureka, California. This is the description just before what they used. Emphasis mine: Irish and Jewish Americans redefining white and American. We will examine the differences between the reception of Jewish and Irish immigrants to what it means to be Jewish and Irish now in the 21st century. We will discuss parallels between language used to describe Irish and Jewish immigrants to those used in the early years of the United States to describe Native Americans. Students will investigate labor disputes and how they were intended and how that relates to the redefining of white, posing questions on who gets to decide, those that get to join the club, and why. Students will write a paper detailing certain events in American history that have led to Jewish and Irish Americans gaining racial privilege. Now, I'm sorry, but it seems to me that someone is trying really hard to see theories of control by shadowy capitalist groups that echo anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and stretching it even more to claim that this is a requirement of the curriculum. He ends that video with a call to fight back against the blah, blah, blah. Moving on. Which brings us back to the original video I was responding to. Whew. I told you this was a bit of a trip. As you recall, Sean, the self-proclaimed Actual Justice Warrior stated that he found this math problem in the proposed ethnic studies curriculum that California is looking to add to their high school graduation requirements. I read the proposed curriculum that he linked to in the description, which, by the way, is over a year old and not the current version, and did not find it there. I looked at the current proposed curriculum and did not find it there either. So before I go further into this video, I'm going to state very plainly that Actual Justice Warrior is lying to his audience. This is not anywhere in the California proposed ethnic studies curriculum. So where did he get this from? Let's go to the next part of his video.
Now, if you thought that was the end of radical left-wing anti-police propaganda being force-fed to the students of California's public schools, then you're sorely mistaken, because this curriculum also calls for the mandation across the state of what is called a Black Lives Matter at School week. And just one look at the Black Lives Matter at School website completely gives away the game, because on the very first page, when you go to their website, you see a quote from Assata Shakur.
Again, I look to the source material, the actual proposed curriculum. And nowhere is this mandated Black Lives Matter at School week mentioned. Nowhere. Not in last year's version or this year's. The closest I can find was an endorsement by the California Teachers Association that schools participate in this one-week event during Black History Month. But this organization is never mentioned in the hundreds of pages of curriculum. Black Lives Matter is mentioned, as is the movement for Black Lives, in the form of one topic of discussion might be the Black Lives Matter movement, or background on the movement of Black Lives can be found here. But this wholly separate organization is not mentioned once. It's possible that he got this information from another source, but he's claiming it's in the curriculum, and it's not. He might be getting the cart and the horse mixed up, though, because this organization is calling for a mandated ethnic studies curriculum, so maybe he thinks that this means that ethnic studies curriculum mandates this organization? I know that's a stretch, but the reason I say this is because remember when he said he found that math problem in the ethnic studies curriculum? Well, it wasn't in the ethnic studies curriculum. It was in the materials for this organization. And I have to say, it wasn't easy to find. There are hundreds of documents and gigs of data on their Google Drive, and I'm hard-pressed to believe that he sifted through all of those documents, found this math problem, and somehow mistakenly thought it was part of the official proposed California curriculum. Look, this is the course example section of the proposed curriculum, all in one document. This math problem is amongst a bunch of other data resources in the high school section on this Google Drive under social justice mathematics material and is a standalone one-sheet document. You don't confuse these resources. You're either lying or you didn't know because it's what people with their own agenda told you to say. He then goes into more of the materials and the messaging of this organization, and that's a separate topic to get into. But the claim is that California is mandating the use of this organization and the study of their materials as a requisite for kids to graduate. And that is just not the case. I've gone through 3 videos of this man's work at attacking the proposed ethnic studies curriculum, and the only thing he said that was accurate, that was not a blatant lie or a biased opinion presented as fact, was that the original didn't bring up anti-Semitism. The rest has been utterly untrue. Now, since he seems to be planning on doing more of these, I suggest he tighten up. Actually, read the materials you're claiming you got things from. You claim to be an actual justice warrior? Then do the work. Or get the people who are writing your scripts to do the work. Because when I see you give out the links to materials that you didn't even read or are completely lying about, that tells me that you have no respect for your audience. You don't actually expect them to check your facts. And they don't. They come to me and say, "This is what California is doing. He has the documents to back him up." When you don't. Why is there no mention that this proposed course requirement would go into effect for California in the class of 2030? Yet you're sounding the alarm as if these things are happening now and there's no process of review or public input. So I hope if you continue this series, you'll mention that the current version was vetoed by the Democratic governor and sent back for more revisions to be more inclusive. And maybe, just maybe, you'll provide access to the latest documents, and before you say anything about them, you'll actually read them. Seriously, son, doesn't actual justice require actual facts? Actually, you're dismissed.
That's my job. That's what I do.
Hold on a minute. I dismissed him. Black Lives Matter at school? You stay. What the hell is this that you're pushing on schools? I'm sorry. I don't like agreeing with these ultra-conservative, fear-mongering, not fooling anyone cultural bigots. But some of the stuff you're putting out there is too much even for me. You lead with your chin, putting Assata Shakur quotes out front, knowing how divisive a character she is. And I know this is a collective effort by hundreds of educators, but someone has to curate this stuff. Look at it for the messaging and see if your approach is working against you. You might think you're right about something, but this isn't science or math. So not everyone has to agree with you, and you can't insist that students do. So you need to have activities that allow everyone to participate, yet not have to conform to your way of thinking. I know this is an elective thing, and schools can pick and choose what they want to use, but you need to have it out there in front that people are free to voice dissenting opinions in these activities. You have to. They're school kids with families that need to know that their kids aren't being pressured to toe the line for outside politics any more than the standard peer pressure that they can't avoid in school. Even parents of high school kids like myself that support a lot of what you're doing are going to blanch at things like this writing prompt where they're instructed to write a poem hexing or placing a curse on those the student are angered and frustrated by? Really? This is a proper exercise for kids? You couldn't come up with some other framework? So get your act together. Don't treat your position as precious and untouchable and leave room for disagreement, or you're just going to make people more entrenched, ostracize vulnerable kids, and make progress that much harder.
That's my job. That's what I do. I don't lose. I win. Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Maybe you came by to congratulate me on last night's victory.